So what's really interesting, so you're using creatine, you're thinking about from a muscle perspective. So creatine, if you were to ask every one of the experts that we work with, from neurosurgeons to exercise physiologists, creatine and omega-3s would be the two things they say every human being should be on. And not creatine for muscle mass, creatine for brain health.
Really?
For
Okay.
cognitive performance, both short and long term. So creatine is just a basic amino acid, but it's one of the key building blocks and one of the key sources of energy in our brain. Our brain uses creatine very, very readily, and so that microdose of creatine is really, really important for your brain health. And for me, creatine is one of the most important things I do every day. And I don't care about muscle gain, muscle growth, none of that. I'm taking creatine solely for cognitive longevity and performance. There's now like 20,000 clinical papers on creatine and brain health around traumatic brain injury, around neuroprotective, right? When you think about, like our pro and college teams are giving creatine to their athletes, not for muscle growth anymore, to be neuroprotective.
Yeah. Or
right?
neuroplasticity, right?
Neuroplasticity, yeah. So when your brain, right, when you have a traumatic event, your brain kind of, right, shuts down. And if you have more creatine, it has more energy availability. Anyway, so creatine for brain health is really, really important, and it's really misunderstood. Creatine is like the most misunderstood supplement out there. Because when you think of creatine, you think of like big muscle-bound bodybuilders, et cetera. And that is true. Creatine is really important in our muscles, but those are really large doses of creatine.
Yeah.
Another really cool thing.
Do you think I'm taking the right amount?
5 grams, 100% microdose.
Yeah.
Super small,
yeah.
right? Not going to get you bulky, not going to make you retain a bunch of water, but really important to top off your creatine stores so that your brain has it, your muscles has it, et cetera. Creatine also is one of those things, it's a commodity almost. It's very, very cheap and very inexpensive.
Yeah.
And so creatine monohydrate is technically the gold standard in the space. And basically, when you're buying a creatine, you just want it to be pure creatine monohydrate.
Yeah.
And there's not a bunch of difference in it. And honestly, like there's not a ton of manufacturers of it either. But what you want to look for is a really clean creatine. And creatine is not expensive. Like we're talking, I think ours is, call it $36 for a 90-day supply. So 33 cents a day or whatever, whatever that, more, a little more than that, 36 cents a day. Like, no, my math is wrong. Yeah, close to that.
Yeah.
Right. Which is
worth it.
Which is nothing.
Yeah.
When you think about like that is like a core building block, brain, muscle, et cetera. And like if you talk to all of our experts, every expert says creatine, 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 omegas, omegas, omegas. Mm-hmm. Whereas creatine is very commodity driven, omegas are not. The difference in omega quality is astronomical in the market.
Yeah, yeah. I like that about the Momentous product. I feel like I can trust the quality. Let's talk about the omega, like when you should take it. So I've heard that you should take the vitamin D supplement and the omegas with food, because that's how it sort of attaches, or that's how it's most effective. Is that true?
I would say vitamin D you always want to take with fats, right? For sure. And so combining vitamin D and omegas is actually a good idea, because omegas are obviously fat. But yes, you should. Vitamin D needs to be taken with some sort of fat substance to increase absorption, bioavailability, et cetera. Omegas you can take with a meal or not. I don't think it's as relevant as a vitamin D.
Okay.
But the challenge with omegas is making sure you get enough, right? And DHA and EPA are the two biggest omega-3s that are really beneficial to supplement. Like our brain is made up of like 40% fat. And of that, most of it is DHA, right? And so supplementing it is really, really important. The challenge is most people don't understand what's the difference or what's the right or effective dose. And that's a really hard one, and the category is really messy, in my opinion, because you can go buy at a big box store, you can go buy 120 pills for $12. Right? But the challenge is it's a gram of fish oil, but it's only 100 milligrams of omega-3s, right? Which basically we know do nothing, right? Because we're talking about, of those omega-3s, of the DHA and EPA, like you need to have like 1.5 grams of them combined, right? Which is a lot.
Yeah.
And where you source these things come from matters too,
Yeah.
right? Because fish in general contain high levels of heavy metals, right? As you go up. And so you want to really think about what type of fish is it coming from? Because of course, I don't know, for me, like, let's not, if I'm trying to supplement to increase health, let's not supplement and potentially decrease health.
It matters.
And so, I mean, there's some really great companies out there. We're obviously very proud of our Omega, and it's, you know, something that I would consider like top of the class. But there are other great ones out there. And so I'd say, like, if every human, you know, like we all said, let's take omega-3s and creatine, we would be a better, more healthy. And those really have to do with brain health, right? More holistically. And when we think about us, right? Our bodies are going to fall apart and all of that. But guess what? We know how to fix that now, right? And if we're one of the unlucky ones that have, like, gets an incurable cancer, or catches it too late, or has some type of genetic heart disease, right? We may go out that way, but likely over the next 40 years, this is what's going to fail us.
Right.
They're going to be able to fix all of this, right? Whether it be, right, lab-grown organs or whatever. I don't know where it will
3D
go.
printing.
3D printed organs. Scary to think about, but it's probably real.
You never know.
What the challenge will be is our brain, right? And so I think realistically, and our diets have changed very differently, but we also understand what the brain needs and doesn't need. And like, that's why sleep is so important, is because how our brain heals, stores memories, right? Increases blood flow is all during sleep, right? It's when our toxins flush out of our brains, right? And we rejuvenate. So anyways, really fascinating.
All right, so we covered sleep, strength training. We talked about cognitive health. We didn't talk too much about hormone health and other health, but I could sit here and talk to you probably for another 6 hours. Let's end on this. Talk to me about mindset. Let's go back to the Momentous brand, your perspective on the company, the brand, where you're headed. How important is mindset?
Our consumer is mindset driven. And so I think the big thing that we realized, and one of the big epiphanies that we had, is we're not a sports company. We're not an athlete company. We're a mindset driven company. Like, this is a mental state of people that we're attracting. It's the same culture that we've grown. Like, we are for people seeking to optimize their life, right? We're not for people trying to bench press 1,000 pounds or run a marathon. Those people are also optimizers. It's the next level up. And so when we took this approach of like, let's attack this from a mindset driven approach of like, how do we optimize? How do we get better? That was really, really core. And so when I go back and I think about, like, mindset in our business, we have 4 core values, and mindset falls into a bunch of them. So like, we have growth mindset, right, is one of them. And right, being open to coaching, always being curious, right? How do we get better? How do we continue to tweak and change and never being satisfied? And there's another one that I think that's really in there around mindset. This is like bias towards action, right? Of like, we have to take risks. We have to move and shake. And right, the ball always gets snapped. Better have a bias towards action, because the ball is like, everything else is moving around us. And if we choose not to move, then you take a step back, actually, right? It's a pretty impactful thing for me. And this other one that is really relevant is selflessness, right? Is like putting the greater good beyond. Like, how do we think about doing more in it? So mindset is very core to who we are. And what we want is a very cognizant mindset within our team. But also, we realized that the consumer is a mindset consumer. It is psychographic, not demographic. It's not sport. It is people that are continuously seeking to create progress in their life, right? That are continuously curious and on a mission. They might be on day 1, we found, of this mission, and we might be starting them with their journey. They might be on year 30. Right, and they might have, right, did Atkins 25 years ago, and right, all these things, and they've just continued to evolve. And like, we meet people where they're at, but it is a mindset-driven approach, not a physical or demographic, etc.
I mean, we were just sitting back, you know, chopping it up, reminiscing about the good old days and all that. You know, tracking my roots, where I came from.